In this video, I'm gonna share with you guys how I got into crippling credit card debt running my YouTube channel and how I got out of it. Credit card debt is one of the worst, if not the worst debt you can possibly get in. Between the extremely high interest rates, between 20 and 30%, and how it just adds up, it's terrible, it's awful. It's one of the worst things that you can get into. So I think in order for me to explain this story properly, it's best if I go back a little bit and tell you the full story about what actually happened. Running a YouTube channel is just as much of an art as it is a business. You need to combine both. You need to do things that are exciting, creative, new, and give people something that they want to watch. However, you also have to be a business owner and look at things from a financial perspective, make smart decisions, and understand how you're going to get the best return out of your investment for what you're doing. So I want you to keep this in mind as I explain this whole story, and think about this while I'm giving you my business model for YouTube and kind of what I was going for originally. I've always considered myself decently financially intelligent. I've always tried to save money, invest money, and build wealth as much as I possibly could. And YouTube was another vehicle that I was going to use in order to create wealth and create a life of financial prosperity. So I've always considered myself decently smart with money. I mean, I'm literally an accountant. Like, I get paid to understand money. Like, this is what I do for a living. In my day job as an accountant, I spend all day long understanding other businesses' money, where they put it, and doing taxes and all that other stuff that surrounds wealth. So understand, I'm not just coming from this from an ignorant perspective. Like, I've done this for a while and I've kind of analyzed it for years. So being a YouTuber, you are tasked with creating content that's enjoyable, that people want to watch, that people want to see, and a lot of times that content is expensive. Originally, when I was focused only on being like an automotive YouTuber, a lot of the automotive content was extremely expensive. If any of you are car enthusiasts, you know how expensive cars and car stuff can be. A lot of these people follow this model that you see, like Stradman, TJ Hunt, those guys. They buy cars, they invest in parts and other things, they build these cars, and because of that, that is their content that they have. Buying, driving, creating these cars, and building these things, that's the content. They film everything and then they make money off those videos, and then later on off merch and other things like that. That was sort of my original goal, sort of what I was going for. However, I started getting in over my head. With all these projects and cars and things I was taking on, I just didn't have the money to fund it, and my YouTube ad revenue was not covering much of anything at all. Right now, I make like $100 off YouTube a month. So I had all this in mind, but I sort of just kept pushing until last May, when it all just started to crumble down. I was in a pretty decent spot financially. I had almost no bad debt. I think I owed like $12,000 or $13,000 on my Corvette at the time, but I wasn't super worried about that because the Corvette appreciated so much since I bought it. I wasn't really worried, and worst case scenario, I could just sell it and cover my costs and I'd be fine. That's kind of a big reason why I bought the Vet, because I knew it would hold its value, and I bought it at a good time. And I mean, I could probably still sell it for a little bit more than I paid for it. Not saying that it was the best decision financially, but it was still a better option, and it was just sort of a way for me to park money for a little bit while I was enjoying this thing and making money off of filming content with it. So last May, I broke my leg. Because of that, that started to create this perfect storm for me to rack up all this debt, and it was a combination of that and just not making smart decisions. So when I broke my leg, I wasn't able to work at my job that I had, so I kind of lost my job for a while. I was able to get a tiny bit of workman's comp, but it wasn't nearly enough to cover my bills and some of the expenses I was racking up. Because of that, I burned through a lot of my cash savings immediately, and I just had expenses that I was racking up from regular living expenses, as well as I was still building the sandrail. That sandrail has cost way more money than I thought it would, and at that time, that was not the time to be spending more money on it. But I was. This whole thing wasn't exactly an enjoyable experience. However, getting in this really bad financial spot helped me to understand why it's so important that I need to be in a financial spot. And I almost felt silly, like I knew better, like to get myself into this spot. Like I thought I was better than this, but here we are, we still make mistakes. I remember thinking, like, how did I let this happen? Like, I knew this was a bad idea to just rack up all this debt. But I guess hindsight is always 20/20, and we learn from it. So there we go. But it wasn't really all that bad, because this whole thing was a big wake-up call to me, and it was definitely a big inspiration for why I made this shift in the YouTube channel and just sort of my business, my life, my content, all of this stuff. Everything has pivoted, and that's a good thing. We need to pivot in order to get better. And I also think that going through this experience has helped me to understand business from a different perspective and helped me understand my advantages and disadvantages when it comes to business. Understanding this perspective was a really big thing that helped me to understand why it was so important for me to publish this book that I was creating. At the time that I published the book, I really didn't have much of any money at all. I mean, I'm still not in a great financial spot. But when creating a business, I think you need to create a business that fits well in your life and within your resources. And money was not one of my resources. However, publishing a book does not really cost that much money. And that's kind of something that drew me to it. No, I don't have $10,000 to invest into a business or something right now, but I do have a little bit of time that I've spent creating this book. It doesn't take a lot of money to publish a book, but it does take time. So at that point, I chose to invest my time over my money. So at the absolute worst, my debt was around $12,000 of credit card debt. Now, $12,000 of regular debt, maybe on like a home loan or something like that, is not terrible. But the problem is, and what makes credit card debt so crippling, is the interest rates. The extremely high interest rates of around 25% per year are what make it so crippling, and that makes your debt snowball so much easier. I got myself in this position where I was spending a ton of money, and because of unfortunate circumstances, I wasn't making any. So I was getting attacked at both sides here. Making money and creating wealth is playing offense just as much as it is playing defense. What I mean by that is, in order to create wealth, you need to bring in more money, have a higher income, and you need to save and invest more money using vehicles like real estate, the stock market, crypto, whatever. You can't make investment decisions like buying real estate if you don't have the income to cover it and pay for the property. Your income is probably your highest wealth building tool, because you can use that to make these important and cool decisions. Now, I'm not at all against debt altogether. I'm just against bad debt. And credit card debt is probably the worst debt you can be in. There's good debt and then there's bad debt. Bad debt is personal expenses on your credit card, debt for things that you can't afford, like cars, going out to eat, spending too much money traveling when you can't afford those things. Those things are all great, but only when you can afford them. An example of good debt could be you buy a property and rent it out to other people, and yes, you do pay money on interest. However, your tenants and the people that you're leasing the property out to are covering all your costs. So that debt is a vehicle that helps you grow your wealth. So I kind of boiled this down into 3 steps that I took to abolish this problem and get rid of this. So if you guys have some credit card debt, listen up. So the first thing I did is I cut out all spending. I stopped spending as much money as humanly possible. I stopped going out to eat. I managed as much as I could on bills. I stopped driving as much to save gas. I moved back in with my parents to help save costs. That was something that was going to happen anyways at that time, but it still helped me out a lot, and I made that decision a little bit sooner. Basically, step 1, I just tried to be as frugal as humanly possible so I could start attacking this debt snowball. The second step that I took was I took stock of my assets, the opportunities that I had, and the things that I could make money off of. One of those things is that I had a second job. I work a second job in opposed to my accounting job as a server. So I basically, on the weekends and in my free time, I worked as much as I could to help bring in extra income. Between working full-time as an accountant, part-time as a server, and having income from YouTube and a small portion from my book, I was able to start bringing in more income so I could attack this debt. Over the years and months, I'm trying to transition into different ways that I'm making my money. However, that's another topic for another video, and at this point, I had to understand what could bring me money right now. So some of the things that I did included selling off as much stuff of mine that I really could. One of the big things that really helped me out was I sold my Corolla. That was something that I bought for really cheap, worked on it, fixed it up, cleaned it up a little bit, and I was able to sell that for like a couple grand more than I paid for it, which was huge at the time. That extremely helped me pay off this debt. That car would have been nice to have because it's cheap on gas and it would have been cheap to keep around, but I just couldn't afford that luxury at that time, and it was definitely the right decision. I also just looked around at all the stuff I had. Maybe there was something I could sell, or there were car parts that I wasn't using, or just literally anything. Like, what do I own that I'm not using that I could sell that I don't want? And it's much better to have that money than to just have this thing laying around. I don't even like stuff. I don't like to have a lot of things. I would prefer to travel light and live a lighter life if possible. I would much rather have a couple few nice things that are good quality than a bunch of random junk. Now, the third thing that I stopped doing kind of goes along with number 2 a little bit, where I tried to figure out where in my life can I bring in more money? What advantages do I have? What situations do I have? And where am I maybe spending money or saving money? And how can I use that to my advantage? I stopped investing and I stopped buying assets or spending money on stocks. Now, this was pretty painful, but I thought it was the right thing to do. Being in this recession that we're in, buying assets and acquiring stocks, buying assets is essential. Everything is on sale right now, so this is really the time to buy. However, I don't think it's the smart decision to buy assets, put money into my 401k or the stock market when I can't even manage my checking account. I was to the point where I was so extremely cash poor that I was paying what I would call poor tax. Poor tax is fees on your bank because your balance is overdrawn. Just you're spending money because you don't have money. That's what poor tax is. So there's no point in spending 25% on interest on your credit card to maybe make 8 or 10% in the stock market. It just doesn't make any sense. So I cut out all of my 401k contributions, HSA, crypto, all that stuff that I was buying, and I just put everything I possibly had to this credit card debt. So what did I learn from this? From now on, I want to be saving more cash. I want to stack more cash to the point where I'm safe. I want to be safer, where I can make transitions in my life from maybe employment, maybe I lose my job, maybe something bad happens. I can cover my costs and cover myself and sort of create this whole fortress of solitude. What I mean by that is your car is paid for, your house is paid for, you have a set amount of things that are paid for, that if worst case Ontario, bad news happens, the world's collapsing, you can go to these things, you own these things, and you are set financially. So all of that is just gonna create this safety so that this doesn't happen again. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you learned from my mistakes. Please take what you can from this video, and I hope it provides you with value. There is a link to check out my book below. I hope you all have a great and amazing day, and I wish you all the luck in the world on your financial future.